Present to you a little bit about the studio in Vietnam. So in Vietnam, it's a place where we've, I can say, been working for decades, and as actually persevere with Bruno over the long time, we realized that they're in this building frenzy. They've got wonderful landscapes and they're disappearing literally before your eyes. So the idea was to bring the notion of a metropolitan park system to them before it's too late. The reason it's really super necessary, we saw from Xenia how Athens is a dire strait, only 2 to 6 square meters per inhabitant. Here it's one of the lowest in the world, 0.55. And again, with knowing that the WHO is 9. So it's, whereas when you look at some of the top 20, there's quite a few in Asia. So of course, for us, it's a kind of good selling point to talk to the Vietnamese, that it's not just in, that also in Asia, they have catching up to do, particularly with China, which would give them extra energy. The landscape of the south of Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City is not in the Mekong Delta, it's in an adjacent delta, but it's very strongly economically and even geographically tied to the Mekong Delta, and its DNA is water. So it's a very rich water system. Ho Chi Minh is a very young city. It's only about young by Vietnamese. So the whole area was occupied by the Khmers and by the Cham, who was a Muslim group, and the Vietnamese only came about 300 years ago when they had their so-called march to the south, so a kind of internal colonization process. Of course, what we're seeing here, these are French. So Vietnam, South Vietnam in particular, has had a very turbulent history, so of being colonized, you could say, by the Northerners, and where the Khmers and the Cham were relegated to a minority population, where they used to be the population. Also with, I have to say, a large group of Chinese merchants. And then, of course, when the French came as part of the French Indochine, there was really a massive planning, because, of course, it was the place to exploit and to take goods out of the Mekong Delta to the ports and to the motherland of imperial France. So we have a whole series of very interesting cartographies. I'm sorry I didn't get the references on these, I got lost along the way. But what's for us really interesting to understand that initially, so there was 2 very strong agglomerations, Saigon and Cholon, which means big market, and it was the Chinese city that we see here, that has the strong link to the Mekong Delta and to the kind of the draining of the swamp, literally turning it into a productive landscape, and with the French taking it out, and then a kind of a city that was of course there with the North Vietnamese, but where the French really formalized. But of course, what you see, interestingly, this is the Saigon River. The eastern side of the Saigon River, very broad river, too big to cross, really. It was a rural countryside, but with quite a lot of very interesting landscape pockets, smaller villages that existed on the natural highlands, knowing that this entire area is a delta. So it's the Saigon Dong Nai Delta. It's wet. Again, here we're seeing another map. This is a map of 1925, where we understand how it's really the whole urban areas in red are really embedded in this very rich, watery landscape, which is also disappearing. So typically what happens is building brings in at least 3 meters of sand. Vietnam has run out of its own sand. It takes it from Cambodia or Laos to build high ground for development. But of course, what's very interesting, if we're talking about a metropolitan park system, there's an interesting framework there that came also with part of the French legacy of building magnificent road infrastructure. French were reinforcing something that was already a very strong part of the Asian way of building roads, where trees were a very important part, often dictated by kings and by emperors. But what you see here is a kind of continuation of this grand boulevards, tree-lined, of course, for a tropical climate, giving necessary shade and relief, but also the interweaving of waters, so this vast waterways. So that was once upon a time. In 1986, everything in Vietnam changed a bit. It's still officially a communist country, but with liberal economics. So in 1986, it had its so-called Doi Moi policy, so open doors like China, and it started booming like crazy. As land laws changed, as people could move where they wanted, not determined by a residence permit. Here we see we're now on the eastern side of the Saigon River, and we're looking back to the city center. So there starts to be a kind of skyline of high-rises. But of course, the predictions for Vietnam as a whole, but for the Mekong Delta and for Ho Chi Minh itself, are really dire, with incredible predictions of basically its submergence. The predictions are also very politicized, so the government doesn't want to publish the more severe ones, and you're banned from showing them in public meetings because they don't want to scare the population. But of course, also what's really interesting is this massive economic growth and raising really a huge standard of living, a growing middle class. Is like in other areas in Southeast Asia and China, that the energy production is going up incredibly, accommodating that growth. And at the same time, there's, I think what Mirji was saying, these kind of published ambitions. There's a lot of ambitions to say we're going to make more public space. But in a city that's quite huge, so 10 hectares of public space, it's really a drop in the bucket. So it's a little bit of but still, they proposed this and they didn't do it because they can't find the land. So for us, what's interesting, so as I say, I've been working there with Bruno, and also Nung has been joining us, and many people here, Mircha, and many people in different capacities. But to me, this is part of an invited competition where we're always a little bit the joker in these invited competitions with very big firms. This was one, I think, by Sasaki. Nikan Seki is there. So we compete for the sake of making a point. And the competition was to double Saigon over the Saigon River to the so-called Dong Nai, to the Dong Nai River, which is here. And what you're seeing is basically the urban footprint. This is in 2018 when we did the competition. And what is in the darkest blue is really deep, and the green is still wet. What we did as a starting point for our project is we also took all the developer plans, so the land is being still officially owned by the government, but is being leased to private development. And these, if all of those plans were built, this is what you would get as a footprint. And you would have a switch from kind of light green to yellow, meaning higher ground, so losing all of the absorptive capacity. So what we started as a premise, and that the students are working on, that you'll see, is we started to look, first we have 150 by 150 comp, then we go down to 100. So actually the two studios were trying to work on a similar scale. It was very different context and certainly challenges. But this is a starting point for us. So understanding that we've got Ho Chi Minh City, or formerly Saigon. We've got a huge UNESCO biosphere reserve of mangroves called Kanzhou. And then we've got, this is a reservoir that comes down the Dong Nai River, and snaking in here, you can barely see it, is the river of the Saigon River. And interestingly for us, we understood that there was a big project built here of canals, of a system of waterways, basically connecting the Saigon River to a series of rivers, the Van Clo system that comes from the Mekong Delta, to basically keep Saigon dry, no? So to drain excessive water areas. So for us, a starting point of understanding this is a topographical map. Again, it's micro topography. There is a little bit of hills here, but I mean, it's hills. So it's really centimeters is what's making the difference. It's nothing like the Palestinian condition where we have this dramatic. So for us, the starting point to again, for Bruno and I and Nung working on this as a provocation to the government, was starting from water and then understanding what is that footprint now. So what we did already a few months ago, and we've given to the students as a starting point to question, to test, here we did it very quickly, but was trying to see exactly where to not build and where could we reintroduce strong structures. So knowing that this area was once all mangroves, that was then cleared and cut and filled, to re-push mangroves back into at least the area in the east, the Dong Nai River. To also, you don't see it so much here, but the upper and the lower branch of the Mekong rivers are being horribly developed, so we said those should not be developed, they should be nature reserves. There's a dune structure that we wanted to keep, quarries. But then for us, very much understanding that there's a potential of a park system available from rivers, river banks and canal banks that could be protected, should be protected for room for the river, but also as a new kind of public space. Also understanding the importance of this water diversion. Agricultural area, that it would also become part of a connected system, where to not build, or where to build maybe a little bit, living in a park. And then of course with some forest, and in the end making a few connectors. So this was a project that, as I say, during actually November we had a workshop, so before we started the studio, presenting this to the local leaders, and having expertise there, and they were saying, yeah, you academics, you do all of this nice open space, but you know, life is different, we're developing, because they're in the midst of making a new master plan. They make master plans every 5 years according to the party congress, translating socioeconomic goals, wild ambitions onto land use. So, I mean, all of our green, and of course following only the administrative boundary of Ho Chi Minh, which we said we don't want to do. And as you see, it's almost all full. So the idea of knowing they need open space for many things, other details of that we start seeing. So even this, which is UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, right in front of it, where they have the mangroves that are going to do the protection, they want to kind of create this horrible kind of Dubai project. All the purple for them is the economic driver. That's industrial areas. So what we tried to do then, and I say we again, Bruno, Nung, and I, trying to modify our wild provocation to relate it more to understanding the importance of their industrial areas, all their ring roads, and starting to see to make urban edges, stopping the city and having landscape systems that work. So this was again a provocation that we give to the students, understanding different systems of water and valleys, so not to explain it, but building on some projects that we've done with the government that have been built. So the first experiment that was built in Vietnam is an aerated lagoon. we imagine that we could have a proliferation of these. It's a new kind of public space. It's actually clean water. Another project, this was actually a project that Mircea worked on with us, where you really weave together, so all of this white, which should have been blue, but it's a kind of warp and woof of water and roads. So it's not denying the road, which they see as development, but giving equal weight to both. So this kinds of images where you can access on the one side by road and by water. So what we're doing now with the studio and the students is we have 6 sites. So we've got, and their work is kind of 3 couples. So we have one couple that's in this area of the west, where we have the canals that come around. The Saigon River is another couple, so these 2 sites, and then a third couple that's on the Dang Nai River. And all of these sites have incredible development pressures. They're all linked to the water, similar as what we're doing in the West Bank. So here you see those sites. All of them have a substantial space, open space still in them, so of different natures. And just that you get an idea, so Minh has done a great preparation for the students of identifying. It's the same size also as what Christian showed, so 3.5 kilometers by 5 kilometers, so we want to have kind of same scale of things. We did some field work in the Christmas break, flying drones. So this is typically what's happening in this area. Huge industrial platforms building up 3 meters, killing the entire water diversion project, where you have somehow these flooded forests, some old linear settlements, but then the big industrial monsters coming, and these are the plants that are coming. So all the landscape simply disappears. Another site in that same family is a wonderful site, also at the edge of the city, of a very well-known project called Saigon South that was made by SOM, considered a wonderful project, which actually has very strange water management techniques. So this project would be, this site is at the end of this kind of coming of new gated communities and this incredible wetland that you can see here. So a little pocket surrounding big new infrastructure, big new gated communities. And again, what is planned for that? So shrinking all that available landscape space into kind of little teeny weeny thing. The second area, the Saigon River, so it's one upstream, a very interesting site that still has this incredible system of large productive landscapes with villages, but at the same time, as you see, already has, if you build it, they will come, infrastructure waiting, and then plans to become this. I mean, this kind of monstrous projects. Similarly, when we go more into the city center, where they just had an international competition, where I got to be on a jury for, they were all very bad projects. We were really angry that we didn't enter ourselves, if I dare say that, because it's a wonderful oasis in the city, and they just want to fill it with high-rise. So it's, this is what you have now, and a wonderful social housing project from the 70s. So it's also, but it's meant, well, this is a pre-planning, but the winning competition is just building high-rise everywhere. The third set of sites is on the bigger river, the Dong Nai River. Similar, so it used to be the place with all mangroves, and it's being taken over by industrial platforms, gated communities, and a lot of huge infrastructure, a lot of bridges. And again, Dubai used to be, Singapore was the model. It looks like now there's other models. And then the last site is in the south, all the way at the getting to, this is the mangrove reserve, but an area where they're having ports. But at present is this wonderful landscape of aquaculture, and a very rich system, but with the kind of threat, you could say, of these large industrial platforms, as you see here, again, to be, so purple is not water, it's industry. So it's to also be completely blanketed. So what the students are doing is we've decided we're not going to draw any plans in the studio. It's again coming. We're going to have one plan that's a work in progress model, continually working. And then right now, before going, they're developing a model based on like 26 layers of paper, based on topography. This will be the only plan of the studio. And this is a little video. I can make it work. Yes. So this is the only plan that we're going to have. It's 5 by 5 meters on the floor, and it's kind of with construction paper coming and going. So it'll be changing throughout the semester. Stop this. And then what they're doing now, and we're going to see tomorrow or the next day, is they're preparing these again 3.5 by 5. So they're creating a topographical map. We don't have good topographical maps in Vietnam, so they're that's why we use this list of trying to understand baseline heights in relationship to each other, and how to read from a few spot elevations potentially. And so the students are already spending a lot of time, and probably want to kill me, making a topography map and then cutting out, as you see here, this kind of small landscape system. So that's the frame. And as Christian said, we're having a small review on Thursday. We have studio all day Monday and all day Thursday. Is the way we work. It's half of our credits of each semester, so it's a little bit more than it used to be once upon a time. We fought to have studio being the base. These students, the 14, will go and work with 3 universities to do field work for 2 weeks on their sites. And they're going to be doing drawings in section and section perspective. Whereas in the Palestine group, they're going to have a trip to Paris, and then Fadi is going to come with Christian, and they're going to have an intensive week. So we cancel classes, so like we're a bit of an autonomous program. So we cancel our classes for 2 weeks, and we do this all the time in the second semester to do field work. Because field work, I think you can see from, that's why we say Tabula Rasa is a kind of banned word, because everything is about doing field work and understanding the particularities. For that, we're really lucky in Palestine that we have a big network of Palestinians that have been here and that are helping, because of course with the kind of rising atrocities, it's not possible to visit. But as Christian said, this kind of working together apart and hopefully giving hope also as a future possibility. So I think we can, Laura, I don't know how to do this. We've got our Palestinian friends online, and it would be nice to get them up. And the idea is we can have a little bit of a short discussion about ways forward.